Hi, I'm Kate and welcome back to Music Production Nerds. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can learn basic music theory using your DAW. Let's go ahead and get started. So before we get into it, I feel like it's important to cover why, as a producer, you would want to learn a bit of basic music theory. In my opinion, I don't think that super extensive knowledge of music theory is necessary to be a great producer, but having that basic foundation of the language of music makes it a lot easier to make songs that work well together sonically and rhythmically. That being said, this learning curve can be extremely difficult, so make sure you give yourself time and patience to fully grasp this completely new language. Now, there's a lot to cover in music theory, but I'm going to go over the basics of rhythm and creating chords. If you want to learn more in a future video, please feel free to leave a comment and give this video a like so we know to create that. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull up this keyboard in GarageBand instead of Ableton, just because I feel like it's a really nice visual for what we're about to learn. Now, you might be able to get by without knowing chord structure or about scales or notes. You could even use a resource like Ripchord, which we've done a review for on our website. But in the long run, it's a good idea to have a firm understanding of how chords and notes work in a sonic sense. So when we look at a keyboard, we have sets of 2 and 3 black keys and then white keys surrounding it. The most important note for reference is C, and you can always find a C note to the left of the first of the 2 black keys. You'll find that the C repeats itself again and again. And these notes all sound pretty similar, just higher or lower. In general, the space between one C and another C is called an octave. Therefore, the space between one C and 2 Cs is 2 octaves. You can kind of think about the musical scale like an alphabet. We start on C, then we go to D, then we go to E, F, G, A, B, and then the scale repeats itself starting on C again. These black keys can be referred to as sharps or flats depending on what direction you're going. So if I go from a C to a D, this is a C sharp. If I'm going from a D to a C, this is a D flat. Essentially, what you need to know is that a C sharp or a D flat or a flat or a sharp note is kind of a midpoint between 2 marking notes. So this note right here is the midpoint between F and G. And we know that because going from C, D, E, F, here's F and G, and then we can see that the midpoint here is F sharp or G flat. I know that's a lot to take in really quickly, so feel free to rewind the video and restart if you need some extra time. Now, with these notes, we can create scales. Scales are essentially families of notes that all sound great together. Understanding scales is a surefire way to make sure that your chords, instrumentation, and anything else in your song sound good together. Scales also help us create harmonies, melodies, and everything else you would need to create great music. Scales also come in 2 main varieties, along with others. Generally, a major scale, which is what we'll be talking about today, sounds very happy. You'll find that most pop music is in the major scale. And then there's minor, which sounds a bit more sad. Bit more common today. You'll see this in like trap and rap genres quite a bit, but today we're going to talk about the major scale. A major scale for the key of C, and key just refers to the type of scale family that you're referring to. So a C scale is going to be all the notes that sound great in the key of C, just like an F scale is going to be all the notes that sound great in the key of F. So to create a major C scale, it's just all the white notes. So if I wanted to play the major C scale, it would just go like this. So I just skipped all the black keys. Now, the reason why I did this is because creating a major scale has a set relationship that can be applied to any starting key. This is known as whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. What I mean by that is between each note, there's a whole step or a half step. A half step or a semitone is like a C to a C sharp to a D. Essentially, it's moving to every next key without skipping any keys in between. You'll notice that in between E and F, there's no black note. Similarly, how there's no black note between B and C. It's still a half step between E and F and B and C, even though there is black note, since they are directly adjacent to each other. So using the formula of whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, so that's whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Or some people like to think of it as 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1. Let's take a whole step, so that's 2 half steps. So C, whole step, whole step. Now I'm taking a half step because there's no black key in the middle. Whole step again, 1, 2. Whole step again, 1, 2. Whole step again, 1, 2. And finally a half step. That'll definitely take some practice, but I assure you, as you get the hang of things with music theory and you keep practicing it every day and just reviewing notes when you need to, it'll soon become second nature and you won't even need to think about it. Note that you can use this formula, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, to create a scale with any starting note. So if I wanted to play the G major scale, I would go G, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. And then I have the G major scale. It's a lot to take in, I know. Scales are important because they make it easy for you to create chords. You can create a major chord from the major scale using the first, third, and fifth notes in the scale. So in order to create a C major, I would play the notes C, E, and G all at the same time. This of course applies to any key. As long as you're creating the major scale properly, you can always create a major chord using the first, third, and fifth notes in the scale. If you want to learn more about different types of scales, including minor scales, go ahead and give this video a like and comment below so we know to create that content in the future. So now I just want to briefly go over rhythm. I went ahead and opened up Ableton just because I feel like their grid is perfect for explaining exactly what I mean. So if we zoom into the Ableton grid, we'll see that there's these different lines that you can adjust by right-clicking and selecting a different grid, but if you don't know basic music theory, it can be difficult to make use of the grid. So with rhythm comes BPM. BPM just refers to how fast or slow a song is being played. In my case, I have 120 BPM. That means that 120 beats per minute can be played within this time space. Within any BPM, there are different types of notes. We have whole notes, which take up a full measure. There's half notes, which exist for half a measure. There's quarter notes, which exist for a quarter of the measure, so on and so forth. As you can see, the measurement refers to how much space that note takes up within a measure. Now, what do I mean when I refer to a measure? Well, this is more important when you're thinking about scoring and composing, but a measure is just a set selected amount of time that musicians use to make sense of rhythm and melodic elements within that section. So as we can see, I selected 1 bar, which in music theory speak would be 1 measure. And we can see that the line happens every 4 beats. I think this is very important because if you don't have a song that is within rhythm and hitting on certain beats, whatever you create is just going to sound discombobulated. I'm just going to briefly cover subdivision. So what subdivision is understanding that notes can be broken up into smaller and smaller entities, essentially infinitely. So here I have this note. it plays for the whole duration of the bar or measure, which is why it would be called a whole note. Next, I have my kick. Now my kick is going to play 4 times within my bar, evenly spaced out. You would use the quarter grid to properly align these kicks since they're essentially acting as quarter notes. For the clap, claps typically come on the 2nd and 4th kick note in pop music. So I was going to use the same grid, a little quarter grid, to place my clap and kick. And as you can see, they sound in rhythm. And you can also use your little tempo gauge here to double check. Everything's hitting that tick mark, including my whole note chord here. And the last thing I want to talk about is a hi-hat. I wanted these to be evenly spaced within. Hi-hats usually rest on 8th notes, so I'm going to go ahead and hit my 8th note grid. And as you can see, it falls perfectly at the beginning of those lines. If I wanted to, I could farther subdivide and click 1/16, and you'll see that my grid gets even more subdivided. I have more guiding lines. Essentially, the measure or bar just keeps getting broken down into half, into smaller and smaller pieces. I can even go down to 1/32. There you go. And everything sounds nice and intact with my chosen BPM. All right, now I know that was a lot, but please let me know if there's anything you'd like me to elaborate on in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe, like, and share. Let us know what type of music theory you're trying to learn. Visit our website, musicproductionnerds.com, if you'd like more music production tips, gear, and plugin guides. See you next time, bye!